And I don't have a gavel, but you all get the point. In accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22 and House Bill 197, I hereby call the Bexley Board of Education special board meeting of Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 to order. Because of the governor's order limiting public gatherings, this meeting will be conducted electronically according to House Bill 197 so that our community members can view it on the Zoom link provided at our website. Our treasurer, Kyle Smith, is not able to attend tonight, so we will need to appoint a treasurer pro tempore. Can I please have a motion to appoint our immediate past president, John Barno, as treasurer pro tempore for tonight's meeting? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. So that is a motion from Ms. Mitchell and a second from Ms. Powers. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Mr. Barner, will you please call roll?
Mr. Barner, here. Ms. Snowden.
Here.
Ms. Mitchell. Here. Ms. Minio. Here. And Ms. Powers.
Here.
Thank you. So before we move on to the agenda, I will just make a few comments. We're meeting tonight for a few specific purposes. Because of the length of our meeting on August 4th, we were unable to hold executive session that night. So we continued it to set a special meeting. We will address that tonight in addition to a new resolution brought by our administration. As information for our community members watching this, per our normal protocols and best practices, we as a board were presented with a draft of this resolution by Dr. Miller before this meeting. That has given us the opportunity to digest it, and with this supporting report she provided, which she will speak about tonight. Importantly, we have also each had the opportunity to individually discuss it with Dr. Miller and ask questions, and there were many. In the interest of efficiency, we will not rehash all of those questions here tonight, but rather we'll simply have a brief opportunity to make a statement on the proposed resolution and vote. As a final note, I want to continue my plea for civility and grace. As this pandemic rages on, the level of fear and frustration in our community is very evident in the many emails and social media posts we read each day. We all want what is best for our students, but we do not all share a common opinion of what that is. There is no way to change that. Everyone needs to make a decision on that for his or herself. All I can do is assure you that we have an incredibly dedicated team that will continue to work with creativity, flexibility, determination, and grit as we go forward. We appreciate your support. So moving on, can I have a motion to approve our agenda? Thank you, Ms. Minio. Second?
Second.
Thank you from Ms. Mitchell. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you, that motion carries. All right, so we're ready to move ahead with the superintendent's report under 2A. Dr. Miller.
Thank you. And before we do that, I will ask you to unmute your computer. Mr. Trill,
a ton of feedback from you. So which is the best way to do it?
If you've muted your computer, unmute your computer, but keep it low.
So this fine. It's really difficult to hear your
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I will shout.
I know that will be hard.
Over here.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Snowden, for that opening. I really do appreciate that. Again, the board members all have received this information and have had time to ask me questions, but for the sake of our community, I'm going to review it and for the benefit of our board as well. So upon your vote on August 4th to require teachers to report daily to schools, inquiries for leaves of absence began. I have worked with the Bexley Education Association to determine how many of their members would have requests for leaves or inquiries about leaves of absence. Approximately 26% of our BEA membership indicated that they would request a leave or inquire about one. 26% represents 49 of our certified non-administrative staff. To go through the interactive process that is required to request a leave, of 49 staff would take a significant amount of time.
Hold on, is everybody else still on? Okay, mine went out. Sorry, Tim. Everybody's still,
Yeah, you're still on.
excellent. I was gone for a minute on my computer and it made me nervous. Thank you.
Okay. Once again, 26% of our staff 26% represents 49% of our certified non-administrative staff. And to go through the interactive process that is required with 49 staff would take some time. While Dr. Williams does oversee human resources, he is the director of operations, also overseeing all of our operations, including the risk mitigation protocols that have been put into place, as well as buildings and maintenance and grounds and food service. And so while he manages HR, we are a one-person HR department, and that is not his only responsibility. That said, he does an excellent job. But again, 49 people to inquire would take some time. In the case of childcare, the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act permits a person to take up to 12 weeks of paid leave when their child's school or daycare is closed. With almost all school districts in Central Ohio beginning the school year in either a hybrid, which is about 50% of the students attending at a time, or fully remote, like Bexley, schools are actually not fully open to students. Therefore, many of our staff members who have young children would qualify for leave for childcare under the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act if they would choose to pursue it. Also, members with a qualifying medical condition would qualify for the expanded Family Medical Leave Act, which has also been expanded again due to coronavirus. In that same survey that the BEA put forth, 61 to 82%, depending on how the question was interpreted, but 61 to 82% of their members indicated that they plan to teach from their classroom at least part of the time during distance learning. So the majority of our teachers were planning to be in our buildings anyway. Based upon the new staffing information regarding the numbers that would inquire about leave that I've gained since last Tuesday, I'm making the following new recommendations. In accordance with your vote on August 4th, I propose that staff are to report to school with the following flexibility. Staff may request a modification to work remotely for a necessary reason and with the approval of their supervisor. So what would be necessary? As I've indicated, a closed school or childcare facility is a qualifying reason to request a leave. Therefore, I would propose that if a staff member has a childcare need, that they would be able to request a modification to work remotely on those days that they are unable to have childcare. Recognizing for some of our staff, this might be 5 days a week, but for some of our staff, it may be 1, 2, or 3 days. So there is the potential that our staff would be able to be here in the buildings at least part of the time and working remotely the other days. The other necessary reason I would believe to request a modification would be illness. In the environment where most every illness looks like coronavirus, from allergies to the common cold, we are all having to be especially careful when we develop any types of symptoms that could be coronavirus, and would therefore need to stay home until a test would be performed or we would be cleared by our medical doctors. During distance learning, if a teacher were needing to take a couple of days because of illness, either for themselves or maybe for a child, under normal circumstances, they would have to get a substitute teacher. I'm not exactly sure how we would have substitutes come in for a day or two, given that with remote learning, access to Canvas and access to the students via Zoom is an important part of how we're going to be able to do school. So if a teacher or a family member of that teacher were ill, but they were able to continue to teach, the flexibility to do that remotely allows us to keep the continuity of our teachers working with our students, as well as, honestly, the savings of not hiring a substitute teacher. The other very real possibility that I would present as needing flexibility would be quarantine. I've said this publicly, so I'll say it again. Yesterday was my first day back in the building because I was in South Carolina when the governor recommended, not required, but recommended that anybody coming back from certain states would quarantine for 14 days. Well, that was for travel, but somebody could easily be in a position where they may have been in close proximity to somebody who has the virus. And so a teacher may need to quarantine, yet they could still be teaching from their home. So again, we wouldn't have to get a substitute teacher. We could allow that teacher the flexibility of teaching from home. So those would be what I would consider necessary reasons for an administrator to approve the flexibility for a staff member to work remotely. I'm proposing that this recommendation is in place until September 17th, when I'm requesting a special board meeting at which I will provide a report to you on the success of our instructional delivery during distance learning and make a recommendation for the future if we were to stay in distance learning or return to it at some point during the year. We have set September 18th as the date at which we would take time to review the trending data in Franklin County to determine if we can begin the transition to a hybrid. The good news is, in my meeting today with area superintendents and Franklin County and Columbus Public Health, is that we are on a 3-week downward trend in cases. I'm very optimistic that we will be able to begin that transition to hybrid. And so while I believe we could return to hybrid, and anytime students are in person, by virtue of the fact that the students are here, all of our staff would need to be here. But I would still suggest that I make a recommendation, because we have also been told that we may expect to be closed again by the state during the flu season, during the months of December, January, or November, December, and January. That's speculative, I know, at this point. But there is the possibility that even if we go to hybrid learning, that we may end up in distance again. So at that September 17th meeting, I would present you with data regarding attendance, regarding logins, et cetera, a number of items that we've put into place, and then make that recommendation. So what does this gain us? During the budget reductions conversations that we had to have last May, we prioritized the retention of our staff. This plan allows us to keep our staff teaching our students. These are staff who might otherwise have to take a leave of absence, keeping our staff from our students and requiring us to find a substitute for that staff member. Even losing one staff member is not best for our students. At a time of budget concerns, we knew that retaining our staff was extremely important, and we continue to believe that. And so this allowance for some flexibility allows us to keep our staff. It also provides support for our staff. Many companies that have transitioned, or many companies have a transition plan when people go back to their offices, where they may go in, similar to our hybrid, a certain number of staff members per day over a period of time. Part of that is about safety and risk mitigation, and some of that is about helping people to become comfortable going back into their workspaces. As I've reported to you, I came back into the workspace full-time every day at the beginning of May. There is a transition that happens when you return to your regular workspace. Taking time to become used to the risk mitigation protocols, seeing how those things actually work, are very beneficial to helping people to be comfortable. At this time when there's so much anxiety, supporting our staff to be comfortable is extremely important. It's so important that when I asked our administrative team to come back in June, I had them come back in a transition plan. Our executive team came back 3 days a week, and the rest of our leadership team 2 days a week. And then after a few weeks, we transitioned to 4 days a week and 3 days a week until we were fully returned to our workspaces. That was for our administrators and our administrative support staff. It was an extremely valuable way to get people comfortable in the space. And so I would support or put forth that to do that for our teaching staff and the rest of our staff is also valuable. We know that some staff are fully comfortable returning right away. As I walked around the building today, I actually saw some of our staff in the building working, and it was a very welcome sight to see some of our staff members here. But we did create a work group around social emotional support, and that was for both students and staff to help them as we transition. If staff have to take a leave when we return to in-person learning, whether hybrid or all in, this plan allows us some time to find those substitutes. Also, hiring a substitute teacher, while is never a replacement for our staff, But hiring someone to come in in-person learning is a little easier task than hiring someone fresh to do distance learning. And so being able to keep our staff who might need to leave working during this distance phase is to our benefit and to the benefit of our students. Also, in terms of having the time to find those substitute teachers if we would need them, if our staff take leave now, we have less than 2 weeks before school starts for our students. If we know that staff are going to have to take a leave when we return to in-person, we have at this point 5 weeks to do that work. And so we have a little bit more time. All school districts fully expect that finding substitute teachers will be a challenge this year, especially when we think about our highly specialized areas. I've said and will continue to express that our staff are both welcome and encouraged to be in our buildings. Getting comfortable in the space before students return will put us in a good place for welcoming our students back, which if the trend data continues should be sooner rather than later. I respect the vote on August 4th to have staff report, and I see some need for some flexibility in order to keep our teachers with our students. But again, I respect that vote, and my new recommendation continues to have staff reporting daily, with the exception of those flexibilities that I discussed. I know there are no right answers, only difficult decisions to solve complex problems. I also respect that we may disagree at times, as a governance team and as a community. We are all trying to do the very best that we can. The landscape changes regularly, and we are constantly shifting. It is exhausting, but we are not alone in this. Companies have started transitions back to offices and then reversed course when cases rose. Colleges have shifted their course delivery plans multiple times over the summer. And even today, the Big Ten has gone from maybe having football to not having football to maybe having football to postponing football and other fall sports. These decisions are difficult because despite offering differing opinions, there is not one right way to do this. The playbook doesn't exist. But we are less than 2 weeks from the start of school, and we need to acknowledge that we have different opinions about how to do this work in this crazy time, and then fully focus on getting students back to learning on August 24th.
Marley, I think you're muted.
Thank you. So that's Dr. Miller's report on our proposed resolution this evening. I would like to entertain any comments from our board members on this item, and I will start off myself and then ask for everybody else's. So at first, I just want to say I appreciate Dr. Miller's work to further inform our decision making and all the incredibly hard work of our staff and administration this last last several months, but particularly this last week. I voted in favor of having our teachers all report to the classroom in distance learning last week because I believe it's the best way for them to give dedicated time and energy to our students while also providing them with the opportunity to safely collaborate and prepare for hybrid or in-class learning. I also want to restate that I trust and admire our teachers as the incredible professionals they are. I believe that the accountability structures put in place by the administration in last week's proposal were sufficient to address the inconsistencies and gaps that occurred during our spring quarter when the pandemic first caused our schools to close. So I was comfortable with that piece. My greater concern, however, was more that of a personnel management issue. As employers, we as a district have the duty to put specific structures in place to maximize efficiency and educational success. We are also subject to vast and varied sets of employment laws, and I'm particularly sensitive to that as an attorney who's practiced in that field. Specifically, I'm concerned with how we will manage the accommodations mandated by the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act and the Family Medical Leave Act that our staff may need to avail themselves of. There are very complex financial and human capital realities that must be addressed, and I believe that the only way to accurately do that was to require our teachers to report to the classrooms so we would know what our costs and commitments would be. Let me be exceedingly clear here. I support each of our staff members and their individual rights and commitments to themselves and their families to safely navigate this time. I also, however, need to know how to run an entire district that is very dependent on those individual decisions. In the week since our last meeting, and in support of the board's vote, Dr. Miller has been gathering information about those individual decisions. It is now clear to me that, although I still believe the classroom is the best place for our teachers to teach from, in most circumstances, our current environment requires flexibility given the enormous complexities regarding leave, accommodations, health, and wellness. Now that we have the numbers from our staff, I believe it would be better for our district as a whole to allow the administration to make specific allowances for flexibility around the teacher's location when necessary during distance learning. As I have told Dr. Miller, it is my strong preference that our teachers teach from their buildings when they are able. It is also important to my vote that this resolution mandates the teachers must report to the building when students' educational needs cannot be met from a distance. All that being said, I will vote in favor of the resolution this evening. Maybe we might just, Mr. Barner, are you ready to speak? I was thinking we might, now people can't see, but we are in a circle of sorts, and it might make the most sense if we just move our way around the circle with comments.
Yeah, just briefly, I did have a lot of questions answered in the last week, and I thank Dr. Miller for taking the time to discuss these. I guess the first thing is, as the board approved the distance learning, which I did not vote against, I do now support it. When the board votes, that's what we support. I will do what is needed to support that vote, and distance learning at the time as we head into the school year is where we are at, and I will support that vote by my board. Second, part of my duties as an elected board member is to hold everyone in the district accountable, including myself. The board approved that in our vote also that staff would report to the building last week. I will also support that decision. Having that vote in place, I think flexibility is also key when we talk about our teachers and having them in the building. As Ms. Snowden pointed out, I still believe and affirm my vote that the best place for the teachers to be are in the building. But the flexibility that the administration has provided with this resolution and with the new appendix, I also understand and agree with, and especially looking into the number of issues from a lot of different perspectives. Third, accountability. Accountability has been thrown around a lot, although I haven't been on social media in probably the last week or so. Accountability is to our students. That's my number one question. How are we being accountable to our students? Not just staff, teachers, or administration, but each of us, including myself and as a board. And that's what we were elected to do. As board members, we're elected to hold everyone in this district accountable to our students, and that's our number one priority. I do apologize if my comments came across that I didn't respect or I didn't think the teachers were awesome or that I trusted them or anything like that. I have an older daughter. My oldest daughter is a second grade teacher going into her third year. My respect and admiration for teachers, not only for my kids going through this school district, but now watching my daughter grow as a teacher and learn and respect how much work she puts in and how she can handle her job and learn. So I do apologize if my comments came across of it as that. I do not disrespect teachers. I highly respect them. I admire them. I understand how this came across, and I apologize for that. But with that said, we all need to be accountable to each of our students, not just some of them, not just most of them, but each of those. And that is what I'm here to do and what I believe I was elected to do. So I do appreciate Dr. Miller and the administration coming up with some modifications, and the resolution starts with the foundation that the teachers will be in the buildings, but it also provides the flexibility for individual cases to look at, that our administration can look at and decide if those special modifications can be made in the special circumstances that would help our teachers and most importantly, our students navigate through this as we go through distance learning and as we progress through the year. So I do support the resolution and the appendix, the modified appendix as written. So I appreciate, again, everyone's work on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that moves us on to Ms. Powers, please.
Thank you. I have great respect for my fellow board members, and I believe that every board member is seeking to do what they believe to be the best thing for our students, for our staff, for our families, and for our community. When we discussed this issue last week, I felt that the concern was primarily a concern regarding the accountability of our teachers to ensure that our teachers are providing a robust and excellent education every day to each student in their classes. No one feels that last spring was perfect. However, at our meeting last week, I felt, and my vote was premised on the notion that there were adequate measures or structures, as Ms. Snowden has said, already in place, as had been described by Dr. Miller, to ensure accountability. I trust our educators and the process pursuant to which our principals, Ms. Abraham and Dr. Miller, will monitor the progress of teaching as we go along. I've reported to the board a number of times about my opportunity to observe the hard work and dedication of the teachers who served on the Learning Experience Subcommittee of the Back to School Task Force. General and special education teachers, teaching coaches, allied arts teachers, principals, everyone collaborating, preparing, sharing ideas for how to teach in hybrid and distance learning models. I have felt privileged to see that planning process and collaboration in action, and I've reported on it because of that privileged perspective that I had. Those ideas and plans are now being shared by that group to other teachers through video conferences that have been set up to go forward this week and into the future. As you all know and our community knows, our teachers are incredibly dedicated. Like my fellow board members, I am concerned about the most vulnerable students in our district. Regardless of whether an individual teacher or member of staff is coming into the building, those teachers and staff members will bring into the building those students who need to be in the building, and the teachers, aides, and others will be there as needed for students. This board puts our students first when we make decisions. I believe that our teachers also put our students first. In last week's meeting, I was not in favor of requiring our teachers to report to the buildings, and I have consistently felt that flexibility is critical to us as we plan for the coming year. I view this new recommendation from the superintendent as adding some measure of flexibility around the issue of requiring teachers to report to the buildings, and for that reason, I support the revision to the appendix. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Powers. Ms. Minio.
I want to start by saying, I think the obvious, which is I prioritize the students. I prioritize our students, their health and safety, their physical and mental health, and of course their education. Because the teachers, our educators, our staff are an integral part of prioritizing our students, I prioritize them as well. I feel that our staff should feel safe and supported, and I feel that we should, I very much respect the teachers, our educators, our staff, and what they bring to our students on a daily basis. I want them to feel supported and safe, and I appreciate the work that Dr. Miller has done in the last week and with our staff to kind of get some ideas for how we can provide education, the best possible educational experience for our students while providing our staff some flexibility. We prioritized keeping our staff way back in May, like that seems like so many years ago, way back in May, we prioritized keeping our staff. And I think, as I said, that because our staff is an integral part of our children's education, I prioritize that. I have said throughout this process that I feel like consistency and continuity for our students is critical. Keeping a consistent continuity to our staff is included in that. And I feel like a flexible work environment where our teachers can consistently provide education, they can consistently provide the lessons, the activities, the whatever you want to call it, they provide, teach, so they can teach our students. I think that flexibility is important. I'm very appreciative of the work and the revision of the recommendation to allow Dr. Miller and our staff some flexibility so that we can maintain our excellent staff while providing an excellent education experience for our students. So I guess to summarize, to kind of like echo what Victoria said, adding the flexibility, I think, makes me much more comfortable with this recommendation going forward, I think, and I appreciate the work that's been put into it. So I'm going to be in support of it too, because of the flexibility and because of the support for our students and our staff.
Thank you very much, Ms. Minio. And Ms. Mitchell, last but not least. You're on, yeah. Unmute.
There we go. I prepared my statement so that I wouldn't ramble. I'd like to thank the Bexley community, teachers and administrators, and my fellow colleagues for the tremendous hours that we've all spent poring over data. Dr. Miller, thank you for the extra work that you put in over the last week to provide the report to the board for additional needs that the district would be facing. We've sat through hours of meetings, exchanging emails, and devoting a lot of energy to figuring out how to survive one of the most sobering experiences of our lifetimes. Everything about what we do every day has been forced to change with little notice or warning, and for that, I want to acknowledge that I understand this is hard, this is stressful, and this triggers us all. To that end, I want to acknowledge all of the many voices that reached out to us equally for or against our recent votes to return to school or not, and to require our teachers to report or not. I believe our vote rightly reflected a board that approaches our jobs with deep consideration for our community, its pulse, and their input. What I've been saddened by is that my individual desire to hold the district accountable for student success, which I believe begins with our teachers, was perceived as a mistrust or lack of respect for the teaching staff. While I don't participate in some of the online forums that our community engages in for dialogue, some of the emails we received that sought to degrade and insult members of our board to achieve a desired end result reminded me of my why. I ran to serve this community, to give voice and advocacy to those who are not able to do so, and too often have been ignored, unintentionally or otherwise. I've seen those students languish in our all too familiar achievement gap, and what I perceived sometimes was a lack of urgency at times to serve those students. Now more than ever, students of color, students of low socioeconomic means, and students with disabilities, as well as our students in the middle and top, deserve an entire district from top down of adults to prioritize them first. They deserve, as the recipients to our services, to receive the most consistent and equally accessible learning experience as afforded them under law. I believe that as it is safe enough to do so, happens best in our schools, with teachers focused and engaged in making that happen. When I refer to accountability, I regret deeply the takeaway was a belief that I had some axe to grind against teachers, or felt they were unprofessional for trying to survive a pandemic that was thrust on all of us. If that were true, I would have needed to abstain from voting. It simply isn't. My vote reflects my belief that in our schools is where we meet the needs of the most vulnerable, while serving and supporting those who excel, but deserve an exceptional learning experience, supporting their needs also. I will take this opportunity to say, yes, of course, I trust you. Yes, I think you're capable, talented, and excellent at what you do. Yes, of course, we had students that succeeded at distance learning. And yes, in spite of having to work from home, I think you can do your job. I also believe, without it being a reflection of you personally or collectively, This was never about your capabilities, talent, professionalism, or personal integrity, and everything to do about what I believe is best for children with the information I have been given as a professional who daily interacts in environments all over Central Ohio, and yes, as a mom. That does and should happen in our school buildings. While I think the idea of independent thought in Bexley sometimes is contingent on agreeing with those who think alike, I want to acknowledge that regardless of the side we stand on in this issue, or whether you ride dead in the middle, there is no wrong answer, just the best one possible. I don't need to insult or disagree or degrade to disagree. And I don't like to trade vitriolic rhetoric to make someone feel small or inflate my own self-worth, just to prove a point. What you all got to witness last week are 5 people who deeply care and invest in the success of our students. And in spite of a crippling pandemic, we did everything we could to retain our staff during that pandemic. This is not about valuing teachers, because I believe we demonstrate that every day in our support of contracts, supplemental contracts, and everything in between. What we know is that the unexpected nature of the spring forced us to behave differently, think differently, teach and learn differently. Those same students that inspired me to advocate so hard on their behalf suffered, and so many others did too. Expecting accountability from teachers, administrators and staff, and ourselves for the success of each student is a commitment we made as part of our strategic plan and central to what we do as a Board of Education. Collectively, we hold every member of this organization responsible to support each student in Bexley, for them to be engaged, and we know many were not, for them to be equipped, and we know we are still working towards that goal, but not quite there, and to be empowered that in spite of a global pandemic that has touched every part of their young and vibrant lives, that they will be educated and afforded every opportunity to be successful and supported in their schools. And we know that many of our students at times have felt powerless. So I want to apologize that my words meant to express collective accountability and responsibility hurt any of you in any way. I did not and would not ever seek to do this. You have been part of my life and the lives of my 5 children for 11 years, and at least 9 more left to go. And you are valued, you are respected for your craft, and while we may all disagree on how that happens, making you feel otherwise without acknowledging your feelings is why I wish to address you all today. I do appreciate the flexibility built into this plan. I think it is important to have that. And I do intend to support the resolution as well, with teachers in the building daily, but with some flexibility.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's preparation and thoughtful decision-making around this very difficult topic. All right, so.
Can I ask just a quick question? I'm
yes,
sorry.
Mr. Barno.
So, and this is just more as a public, and just so the public is aware, we're not talking about, in the resolution spells that we're not talking about accommodations like that carry legal definitions. This is talking about specific circumstances with very specific modifications on case-by-case basis, right?
Right, and that's why I think Dr. Miller was careful to use the word modification as opposed to accommodation in it. Yeah, which I appreciate because
those are also all
different.
Available to
available
our
and
staff.
Important as well. Yes.
Right, and that these modifications, when they're being requested, would be requested usually through the building principal, or depending on where the staff is or how they would be. Okay.
Yes, those we will have a plan in place to request modifications from the supervisor, which is generally the building principal. But as you said, any ADA type accommodation or leave, that's a separate, as you said, matter that's handled legally. And Dr. Williams is working with staff who need to pursue any of those.
Okay. Dr. Miller, I did have one quick question. Just with FMLA, and I don't know for sure, that's not my wheelhouse. But I thought when someone is on FMLA, they are not permitted to work. So if someone needed to take a leave of absence under FMLA, then we would in that instance need to procure a substitute.
Yes, if a staff member takes either leave under the expanded FMLA, the regular FMLA, or the family first.
So it's just whichever
There-
bucket.
right, it's what any kind of a leave means the person is not working and we would need to hire a substitute teacher for that person. Again, the flexibility is that hopefully some of our staff won't need to take a leave because they'd have the flexibility, and then we keep our teachers with our students.
Gotcha.
That's the goal. Thank you. Clarifying.
I just, yeah, thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Any other questions for Dr. Miller? All right, then I'd like a motion to approve item 2C on our agenda. You'll have to unmute. Go ahead.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. That's Ms. Mitchell, and Mr. Barno is the second. All in favor of approving item 2B, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. That motion carries. All right, so are there any other matters that may properly come before the board this evening? We generally have that as a catch-all since things are changing so quickly. Dr. Miller, all right, fantastic.
We're not allowed to make any changes today.
We've had enough of that. Okay, then we will be moving into executive session. So
Would we come out of this Zoom and then come back into it?
So we will, since we're all in the same room, distanced, we'll close down our computers and then we'll return to the meeting for our vote. We will address, well, let me read this part. Whereas a public board of education may hold executive session only after a majority of the quorum of the board determines by a roll call vote to hold such a session at a special meeting for the sole purpose of considering, in this case, we will be considering employment and compensation of a public employee. So under those structures, we will be discussing that and then come back out of executive session to vote on that matter. We don't know what time it will be, so we have done work in advance, so hopefully we won't be here as late as we were at our last meeting. But just so the public is aware, that's what our plans are for tonight. So we will be closing our computers for the public, but we will be working and we'll come back on as soon as we are able. So can I have a motion to hold executive session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. So that's a motion by Ms. Powers and a second by Ms. Minio. Mr. Barno, will you please take a roll call vote?
Ms. Powers,
Yes.
Ms. Minio, Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden,
Yes.
and Mr. Barno, yes.
Thank you. All right. We will now move into executive session. Thank you.
When I look at my.
Aye. Do you want me to send Tyler a message? Oop, sorry, guys.
Thank you. I think we're going to echo for a minute because we're too close. Can you turn down the volume? Everybody turn down their volume. And turn off your microphone. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, now, okay, maybe I was hearing.
Got it. Okay, so sorry, my authentication has been lost. So I'm trying to do Board Docs again. So we have a second motion and a second to come out of executive session. It is now 9:12. And I would like to entertain a motion to approve item 5A, please.
So moved.
Thank you. And I think because it has personnel involved, Mr. Barner, would you mind doing a roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden,
Yes.
Ms. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Powers,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well.
Thank you. So that resolution passes. May I have a motion to adjourn our meeting, special meeting of August 11th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. That's Ms. Powers in motion and Ms. Minio on the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. That's it. Thank you all very much for attending tonight, and to our public, we will have our next regularly scheduled board meeting on September 1st. Thank you.